In this video, I'm going to show you how to design something like this, which essentially is a letter that you can, add in any font choice you want, and then fill it from start to finish, fill the letter with a series of words that you choose, and again, in whatever font you want. So to start off this, you basically just, add a letter. And the sizing doesn't matter too much because in the end, you can always, shrink it or expand it, to fit your project. So I'm making it fairly large just so it's easy to see on the screen. So the first step, and by the way, before I get into this, you might want to take notes because there are kind of like a lot of little steps, a lot of things where I might be saying, don't forget, or you'll need to do this, you'll need to do that before you can do the next step. So you might want to kind of keep a list of the to-dos in order to do this project. Nothing is complicated. It's just a lot of little ones. Or little steps. So the first step is that we need to get a path that will go right through the very middle of this letter, just a single line path. And that's where we're going to be using Inkscape, which is another program. It's a free program. It's available for Windows and Mac. You can download it from inkscape.org. Now, don't be, kind of fretful about having to learn a new program because the way I use Inkscape, I've been using Inkscape for 20 years, but I don't really know it very well. I use it just for the little things that it's able to do to help me design what I want. And so it has, like maybe, 4 or 5 different little features in it that in 20 years, I've like, oh, I'm so glad Inkscape can do that little step for me. So just think of it as just a quickie little thing that you just follow this video and see what I'm doing and then do the same thing and don't worry about the other, 500 things that you could find inside that program. Again, it's free. That's the key. All right, so to get this little line, so because this letter is rather thick, what I found worked better when I get to Inkscape is if I make it kind of like an inset of it, so it's not quite so wide in certain places, right? I'm trying to shrink it down, and you can get a better, smoother centerline trace if you do that. So I'm going to take this letter, and I'm going to go to Effects, Shadow Layer, and I'm going to make an inset shadow. So I'm going to mark this little box here. Now you may, depending on what letter you're using and what font you're using, you may need to do a rounded shadow. You'll just have to kind of look at the shadow and think about the purpose of it being to get a smooth path. As it was, I just left it shadow and I was able to get the path I wanted. So then at this point, you just start increasing this. Now, if you increase it too much, you'll see that it, has a break up here. You don't want to break in the shadows. You want to come back to something that will fit. Oops, wrong direction. Well, that's going to be too thick. So you'll notice, it's jumping from 6 to 11. So I can just come in here and type in, well, let's try, say, 9. Okay, hit the tab key, and I go, okay, yeah, 9 works. Maybe I can go with 10. And you don't have to overthink it too much, but 10 works fine. So at that point, that's pretty thin right there, and I don't really need to go thinner. So I go, what, good enough. So then you can change the color if you want. I might change to blue. And then once you have that, then you click on OK. Now, before we export this to use in Inkscape, it's very important that this shadow that you created does not have a stroke on it. So on the Fill and Stroke panel, oops, I got the wrong one. Let's click the shadow layer. Okay, here on the stroke, change this to none. Okay, and then just leave a fill color. If you leave it, I don't know if the problem occurs if you leave it at the same color, but for sure if the stroke happened to be a different color, let's say gray or black or something, then when you get ready to do the centerline trace in Inkscape, it will trace the outer stroke versus the inner part, the fill color. So make sure, so just to be safe, just change that to none. Now then, with this shadow layer selected, all right, and actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to move these apart. So I'm going to export both of these. So I'm going to select both of these. Oh, I don't have to select both of them. I've got both of them. I'm going to export both of them. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to go to File, Export. And then I'm not going to use SVG because you cannot centerline trace. You can't trace an image if it's a vector. So I need to make this a raster. So I'm going to change it to PNG. And then I'm going to, now this is one of those, make sure you know where you're saving it. I can't tell you where you saved it. You need to pay attention where you're saving it. I'm going to use the desktop, so it's really easy to find. And then I'm just going to put SS for those 2 S's that I'm exporting as a PNG. When this window opens, I'm going to just leave the resolution set to 300, or if it's not 300, you can make it 300. The background probably doesn't matter. I'm just leaving it transparent, and then I crop it just to get rid of any extra space that's around the outside. And you can even set this to 0 if you want to. Okay, and then that's really the only thing I have I have marked. So then I click on OK. Then I'm going to come over to Inkscape. Now, Inkscape, again, you download it, install it, and then when you open it, just a second here. Okay, select New Document. Okay, then come over. Now, this window, this screen may open. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. I'll show you how to open it in just a minute. Go to File, Import, locate the file that you saved, my ss.png, click on Open. I accept the defaults, just click on OK, and then this shows up. All right, so if you do not see this part on your screen, go to Path, make sure your object is still selected. Go to Path, Trace Bitmap, and then this should open up. And then over here, you'll see a bunch of tabs. The Trace Bitmap should be the one selected. And then the first thing is under detection mode. Change that from brightness cutoff down to centerline tracing. And this is the tracing function that's going to put a line through the middle. Now, because we brought both of them, it's probably going to put a line through both of them. But the only one we really care about is this letter right here. Now, unfortunately, for some weird reason, in these newer versions of Inkscape, you don't see the actual line. It used to be that it didn't show this, it just showed you the line, which was really nice because then you could play with the settings and you knew what you needed to do to make it look better. For some odd reason, that's not working anymore. At least I couldn't figure it out, couldn't find a video to teach me. ChatGPT says it doesn't work. So, when chat tells you it's not going to work, well, then maybe it really doesn't work. But the one thing I did do is down here under smooth corners, I brought this all the way to the right because based on the letter S, I want a very smooth as possible line that goes through the middle. So once you get these settings, just go ahead and click on Apply. Okay. And then, by the way, if you are not happy with the trace line that you get, the centerline trace, well, then just sort of tell me, and then I'll look into it. So anyway, after I accept it, you'll see this is the only thing selected. So I'm going to come down here, and I want to be able to see it. And so I'm going to change its color. And to change the color of that centerline trace, I'm going to right-click on something very bright. Okay, I'll take this red. And then when I right-click, I can select Set Stroke. And when I do that, now then I can see that centerline trace. And indeed, it goes through the middle of the letter, all the way around. There's some little funky things, little lines here, not to worry. That's a common thing you see with centerline tracing in all programs. In fact, actually, I think Inkscape does a better job than any of them that I've personally used, which again is nice because it's a free program. But what I want to do is, because this is actually the letter I'm going to be filling, I'm going to move the centerline trace over to the middle of this letter. Okay, and actually, I'm probably going to select all this and move it over so I can see it. By the way, don't resize this window, whatever it comes in at, leave it that way, because you're going to eventually, this is going to be your actual path. And so you don't want this to change size because you're going to need to know the size of it. All right, so don't change this size. Just accept the fact that part of it sticks out beyond the document. Or I think under File, Document Properties, you can come in and make it bigger if you just absolutely have to have the white space, filling behind the letter. Doesn't matter, it doesn't change the trace, so I just left it the way it is. Okay, so now then what I want to do to this particular letter is I want to move this trace line down so that my first word will start, or last word, either way, will start closer to the edge of the letter, and same thing over here. So this function right here, the second one, the node edit, this is what you click on to then do some node editing. And I don't want you to stress out of this node editing because you don't have to do very much of it, because of the fact that when you put the words, then when the words end up coming up here and filling up right through the middle of this line, it's not going to make that big a deal. If there's like a tiny little bump or something, just a little imperfection, it's not going to warp that letter to that little bump in the curve, so to speak. It's just going to kind of ignore that little bump. So you don't have to be too obsessive about it. So I come right up here to this last node, and I'm going to bring it down here so it's very close to the edge, but not right to the edge. This one over here, I don't want this little part jutting out. So I'm going to select this one and delete. And then down here, there's another little one. In fact, let me zoom in here. Let's just the zoom tool is right down here, second from the bottom. Just click on that and then drag your mouse to kind of zoom in. Then come back to your node edit mode up here, second from the top. And then I can select this little node and get rid of it. And then this one, I can drag it to come all the way up here. Now, you may want to do a little node editing just to make this a little more curved, just in case. So I select this little handle. One of the things in Inkscape, the node itself is a little square icon. The Bezier handle, which affects the curve, is the little round, the circle icon. So I'm going to select that, and then as I just drag this away from that node, see, I can change the shape of that curve. So I can make it just a little more curved right there. And then I'm going to come right back up here at the top. Now again, here it's probably not going to make a difference, but if you feel like it does, you can try curving it just a little bit out. Although if you have too many clusters of nodes like right here, you actually need to come up and delete some of them so that you get kind of a more of an open area to work with for adjusting the nodes. So let's come down here and let's see what we have here. Like this one I might get rid of, and this one I might get rid of. And again, it's kind of hard because if you try to delete a handle, you can't. You have to delete an actual square node. All right, so then, for example, I could move this out a little bit, but then, this one might need to move out to get like I said, don't obsess with it. I'm obsessing right now. Don't do what I'm doing. How's that for advice? Okay, so again, just you can fool if you want to, but you probably don't need to. And then up here again, I might move this a little bit closer. Here is the node. I need to get rid of some more of these square nodes in here if I want to try to curve it out. Okay, and then again, don't obsess too much with it. It's not going to matter. Okay, just play with it just a little bit. That's good enough. All right. So now that once I have that center line path, then I'm going to select it. Well, I'm going to take the outer part here. I don't need this anymore, so I can delete it. Then I can select this letter and go to Extensions, Visualize Path, Measure Path. And then when this window opens, leave this set to length because that's what you're after. You want to know the length of that path. Length unit, change this to whatever you're using. I'm using millimeters, or you might be using inches. I think the default, the first time I did it was pixels, and I definitely didn't want that. I wanted it to be something that I can match up with, in your cuts a lot. So I'm going to select millimeters, click on Apply, wait, click on Close, and now then it puts it right on the path. Now then, with the path, with this, the path and the length, I can go to File, Save As, and then give it a name, and I'll call it letter path or something. Okay, and then again, make sure you know where you're saving it. I'm saving it on my desktop so I can find it. Now then, back in your cuts a lot, I go to File. Oh, actually, I can just go Import. Find that new SVG file I just saved, letter path. Click on Open. Okay, so it comes in here, and I need to ungroup. So I'm going to right click. And I was thinking they had an ungroup. There it is, ungroup. Make sure you have the ungroup. And then here with this letter path, I want to drag this out. I'm going to drag the size out, and I'm going to drag the path out. So they're both outside of this group. So now then this group is empty, and I can hit Delete key. So for this, kind of off to the side, I'm just going to use that as a notation because I'm going to have to make a line the same length. And then I've got my circle here, or my path that I can come over here and line up again and make sure, yes, it still fits as well as it did back in Inkscape. Like I said, this is the reason you don't want to be resizing it, right? Because this is going to end up being the path that you work with. Once you have this path, then you can resize everything. But for now, you don't want to. You want to just kind of keep it so that it fits inside this letter you already have. Now then, for the object on path, what we will do before you type out your words, you want a path, you want a straight line, a horizontal line that's this length. So I come over to the draw tool, which is a 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth one down, left click it. Now then, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'm going to left click, enter. It doesn't have to be a certain length yet, just enough to get a line. Then hit the select key. So now that I have this line selected, and now that I'm going to size it to this length right here. And again, I'm working in millimeters, and this is in millimeters. That's important. And then I just drag my mouse to highlight that, and then I can put in the 410.78, although 411 would be close enough. You don't have to be that exact. Just get within a millimeter and then hit enter. Now that I have that length. And then this I no longer need. You can delete it or hide it or whatever. I'm just go ahead and delete it. The next step is to type out your words. And so pick your font, decide what you want to use. For size, for this rough size, I found that making it about, come to the text panel, this one right here. I found that making the size, well, let's see how this looks. No, that's too small. I don't know how it got so small. I think I was using about 12. Okay, we'll put in 12. You can always resize it. It's not that important to make it perfect. But click again, left click again so that you have the size. So I've got text selected. I have a size selected. I'm just going to start typing words. So I'm going to type in kind, space. And of course, you've picked out the font you want. You don't have to worry so much about the size perfect or color anything. You can do all that later. So kind, generous, smart, funny, helpful, intelligent, all the different adjectives you think would be perfect for the project. So I'll put in maybe one more adjective, kind, generous, smart. How about trusting? All right. So now I have that. Now then for the size, you want it to be, you don't want to resize it so that it goes all the way to the end because you probably want a little more spacing between the words. So I'm going to hold the shift key and just bring it out just a little ways. And then that way I still have room for spacing. Once I do this, now then I need to break this into the individual words. If you're using SCAL6, it's really easy. You go to text, split by spaces. If you don't have SCAL6, you're using 5 or earlier, then you'll have to use object ungroup. But when you use object ungroup, it then will break up the words into individual letters. You'll have to come back and reselect each word and then do a group on it, a Control G. Because the idea is you need each one of these words to be its own sort of individual shape. Now then, have a look at what you have here. You need your text on top, which it is because I did it last. Right below that, I have my path. So I'm all set now to basically space out these words so that they start and end at the length of this line. So select this and go to Object, Distribute. Now when you go to the Distribute window, most likely Distribute to Selection is going to be the one that's selected. You need to select Distribute to Selection below. Then you repeat it, but you go to Object, Distribute space horizontally. And when you do that, it spreads out those words so that now then you have that equal spacing between every word. Now then I don't need this path anymore, so I can delete it or hide it, your choice. Okay, I also don't need the skinny version anymore, so I can get rid of that. And then I'm going to bring this over here, and I'm going to hide my original letter so that I can just more easily select these items right here. And then I pause and I think, did I forget anything? Probably, but we'll see. So now that I go to Effects, Object on Path, that's what's going to put these words along the path. Click on Auto Preview, and yay, I didn't forget anything. There they are. And of course, you can change reverse path order if, for example, whatever you're working with, well, it's a good idea just to test both of them and see which one looks better. I think the other one looks better. This one just, all it does is just starts at the top and brings it all the way down, but instead you can do it this way. So just figure out which one looks better for you. And then once you have it, you can click on Remove Path if you're happy with it and click on OK. All right, and now I can come back and turn on my letter. And so basically that's how you end up filling up the letter with a series of words. So as always, if you have problems, I did this on one letter, one font. So, it could be that, there's going to be situations in which you run into problems. But that's why I'm here and why I like to volunteer my time, is because it's really fun. I learn a lot too when I'm doing this stuff. And it just also just shows to me just how much power you have in designing when you have a program like SCAL6, and then when needed, go over to Inkscape. Inkscape is very compatible with SCAL6, so you're able to go over there and do a few things that you might need. So again, hope this helps.